Factsverse presents. Husband agrees to take comatose wife off life support. Doesn't realize she hears everything. Most young married couples are busy trying to choose the furnishings for their home, discuss when to start a family, settle into their new lives together. Most young couples believe that their whole lives are ahead of them. They don't expect life to throw them a curveball here and there, especially some severe curveballs. And when something like that happens, it takes them by surprise. Ryan and Jill Finley live in Jones, Oklahoma. They work hard all week and look forward to taking it easy on the weekends. Ryan worked as a plumbing contractor, Jill worked as a loan underwriter. They loved to just relax around the house together. On their days off, Ryan loved to sit on the front porch reading the newspaper. His wife liked to sleep in, so he tried to be quiet so he wouldn't wake her. One Sunday morning in 2007, it started as a typical day in the Finley household, but soon Ryan would realize that the day would be far from ordinary. Ryan was sitting on the porch like he always did early in the morning, and Jill was still in bed. For some reason, Ryan felt like something was just off this day. He decided to go inside and wake Jill, and when he got to the bedroom, he tried to wake her up, but she didn't move. He tried many times to wake her up, but she remained asleep. He says that he was yelling and shaking her, but nothing would wake her up. When he realized his wife wasn't breathing, he panicked. Ryan knew that he'd be no help to his wife in panic mode, so he tried to calm himself and he ran to the phone and called 911. While he waited for the ambulance, he took Jill from the bed and placed her on the floor. He began performing CPR, hoping to keep her alive until the ambulance arrived. Fortunately, he had taken a CPR course just 10 years earlier, but he never needed to use those skills that he learned until now. He fought hard to resuscitate his wife until help arrived. Ryan says it felt like forever for the ambulance to arrive. It took the EMTs 15 minutes to get to the house, and they took over as soon as they arrived. Ryan stood outside the bedroom to give the medics room to work. All he could do now was hope and pray for the best. The EMTs used a defibrillator to revive Jill by administering a dose of electric shock currents to her heart. Ryan says that he could hear a thump and then a second thump. It was Jill being lifted up from the floor and then back down. Soon it was time for them to leave. The paramedics knew right away that Jill needed immediate attention, and they rushed her to the Oklahoma Heart Hospital. Ryan needed to be by his wife's side, so he got into his car and followed the ambulance. He was so distraught he didn't know how he managed to drive. When Jill got to the hospital, the medical staff immediately put her on a respirator. When Jill didn't wake up right away, the doctors knew they had to take further steps to save her life. Ryan says it took 20 to 25 minutes to stabilize his wife enough that they could treat her and find out what had happened. That was the question on Ryan's mind. How did she end up like this? Thanks to Ryan's quick actions, the doctors were able to get Jill breathing again, and her heart was now beating again as well. Unfortunately, Jill was not out of the woods. The doctors determined that Jill had suffered a cardiac arrest in her sleep, and she'd been deprived of oxygen for nearly 5 minutes. They had to place her in what's called a chill suit, which is designed to induce clinical hypothermia in an attempt to reduce the chances of brain damage. The doctors wrapped her in large cooling pads, and they treated her with circulating cool water for 24 hours. This lowered her body temperature to 90 degrees. According to Jill's doctor, Dr. Michael Scheffler, studies had shown that this treatment could help protect the brain so that she could recover. Ryan could do nothing but wait. The next day, the doctors started warming Jill's body. They were hoping that she would wake up during the process, but she didn't. The doctors ran tests and discovered that she had very little brain activity. They gave Ryan the news, but he refused to give up on his wife. Jill was in a coma. Her situation wasn't looking good, but Ryan stayed by her side and refused to leave, regardless of what anyone said. Ryan wouldn't leave his wife's side. He was sure that she would beat the odds and come back to him. He started sleeping in the hospital just in case she came to in the middle of the night. He stayed by her side, reading verses from the Bible to her, and he laid in the bed next to hers. Days passed, and Ryan refused to leave Jill's side. The doctors didn't have much hope for Jill's recovery, but they didn't want to tell Ryan directly that there was no hope. The doctors told Ryan that things were grim, though. They told him that only about 1% of the people in Jill's condition can make a total recovery. Ryan knew that the chances were low, but in his mind, there was still that 1% chance. He prayed that his wife would be all right, and he kept a diary. It was his way of expressing his feelings about what was happening to his wife. It was a very dark time for Ryan, but he knew that he couldn't give up on Jill. He had to fight for her. As the days passed, Ryan's fears grew. The doctor told him that she was showing no signs of recovery. If she did pull through, they told him that there was a chance that she would remain in a vegetative state or not fully recover where she could function on her own. He didn't know what to do. He also didn't know what Jill would want him to do. Ryan and Jill's friends and family members remained hopeful that she would wake up. When 14 days had passed, the doctors still had the same news. Jill's condition wasn't improving at all. The time was coming where Ryan and Jill would have to make a decision. For Ryan, it was one of the hardest decisions he had to make in his life. He didn't want to lose Jill, but he also didn't want her to have to spend the rest of her life in a hospital bed. In his diary, he wrote, "Today could be the worst day of my life. I essentially have to decide whether or not Jill will live. My soulmate. My everything." Jill didn't have an advanced healthcare directive or a DNR order, but Ryan remembered something important. When his aunt was hospitalized and put on life support, he remembered something that Jill had said. She told Ryan that she would never want to live that way. She didn't want to spend her life living in a bed on a machine. He was under pressure because the doctors told him that it was time to make a decision. After talking to Jill's family and friends, Ryan made the most painful decision of his life. He decided that it was in Jill's best interests to remove her from care. He knew she didn't want to live in a hospital bed forever, so he decided it was time to inform the doctors of his decision. Ryan says it wasn't easy. You never expect to make a life-and-death decision for your 32-year-old wife. Before Ryan and Jill's loved ones said goodbye, the doctors let them know what to expect when Jill was taken off life support. They told him that she would not die immediately, and some people experience reflexive moves. Some even make sounds that are referred to as the last rally. The family said their goodbyes, and Ryan held Jill's hand while the doctors turned off the machines. He braced himself for the worst, which he knew would be coming. On June 9, 2007, Jill was removed from life support. Ryan says that her upper torso shifted a bit and she started mumbling. That was too much for Ryan, and he ran out of the room and got sick. Ryan didn't want to leave the hospital, though, until his wife was truly gone. It was hard to stand in the room because he kept feeling hope. Hours passed, and Jill still had not passed away. Suddenly, the nurse told him to get into the room quickly. It was 11 p.m. 5 hours had passed since they had taken Jill off of life support. Ryan sat by her side as she mumbled out loud. He thought that she was showing those last rally signs, that she'd be leaving him soon, like the doctors said. He listened carefully to his wife and tried to make out what she was saying. Suddenly, she did something that shocked her husband. Ryan was listening to his wife when she began speaking coherently. She clearly said, "Get me out of here." She continued saying things that made sense. She said, "Take me to Ted's and take me to the Melting Pot," which were Jill's 2 favorite Mexican restaurants. Ryan started to ask Jill questions to see if the words were actually coming from her or just a reflex. Ryan took out his phone and started recording. He thought he might need proof for the doctors when he asked Jill their dog's name, their cat's name, their phone number. She knew all the answers and even told them their address. Ryan realized right away this was not her last rally. Jill was waking up. Everyone was shocked by Jill's recovery. Everyone, including the doctors, were sure she was going to die. Now she was breathing on her own. She could answer every question Ryan asked her. Within 6 days, Jill was healthy and back to normal. She said that she didn't remember much about her time in a coma. She remembered being wheeled into a big shower every day, but nothing else. When Jill learned that Ryan chose to discontinue care, she wasn't angry at all. Instead, she said that he had made the right decision. She says that she didn't want to live hooked up to machines, and Ryan did the right thing by discontinuing care. She stood by what her husband did because she didn't want to spend the rest of her life in a bed. The doctors ran some tests, and they determined that Jill had a congenital condition that caused her heart to stop while she was sleeping. This is what led to her coma. The one thing the doctors can't explain, though, was how she woke up from the coma. They can only chalk it up to a miracle. Jill agrees that it was a miracle that she woke up, and she credits God and her husband for saving her life. She's sure that God answered Ryan's prayers and brought her back to him. After Jill woke up, her recovery wasn't completely over. She had to relearn many things, such as how to brush her teeth, tie her shoes, even how to cook. Between visits to the occupational therapist and the speech therapist, the surgeons implanted a pacemaker in her heart to prevent another cardiac arrest. Jill is just thankful that she has a second chance at life alongside her loving husband. This husband agreed to take his comatose wife off life support. He didn't realize that she heard everything, and he never truly gave up on her. Subscribe for more.